Welcome back to another episode of Life Sci AI, the podcast series. And as you know, this series is focusing on the use of AI within drug discovery. And as we have focused quite heavily on some scientific questions so far in this series, we thought it'd be really interesting and pertinent, really, to discuss effectively the situation of the industry as of now and contextualize also a big event that happens but just before recording this episode, the JP Morgan conference for 2023. Now, to do that, we are very excited to have someone very special on for this episode, Dr. Juana Candia, who is formerly of GSK, Novartis, and Roche, and has recently held board positions at the likes of Scailyte and LeadX Pro. Most interestingly, though, perhaps, she co-founded one of the first biotech startups in South America. So she's extremely well placed to be discussing this episode, the state of the industry. So thank you very much for joining us on this special episode, Juana.
Oh, a pleasure to be with you, Nick. Thanks for the kind introduction.
No worries, my pleasure. So I guess I'll kind of allow you to set the scene, as it were, for those that might not know too much about the specific uses of AI in life sciences. Before we delve into the situation in regards to JP Morgan and how important it is for our industry, it'd be good to set the scene, as it were, as to where we are as an industry in the uses of AI.
Sure. Thanks, Nick, for the question and to setting up the stage. For me, this is where it would be to illustrate the current situation of the industry by looking into a particular case I recently seen at the MIT Technology Review. What is this about? An 82-year-old patient suffering from an aggressive form of blood cancer and not cure foreseen after 6 rounds of chemotherapy failed, was enrolled to a rather different and new trial. In this trial, tissue samples were taken containing both normal and cancer cells. Those samples were then divided into more than 100 pieces and exposed them to various combinations of commercially available drugs. Then, using the AI matchmaking technology from Exscientia, they assessed tissue response. In fact, this was like an ex vivo upscaling of what the doctors had done, trying different drugs and see which one would work best. But instead of putting the patient through multiple rounds of long and debilitating chemotherapies, this trial was testing dozens of treatments all at the same time. The top runner of those testing and screening process killed the cancer cells, but also harmed the healthy cells. Given the weak condition of the patient, the runner drug was chosen, the runner-up, the second best in this case. It turns out to be a Johnson & Johnson drug not known to be effective for this type of cancer. In 2 years on, the patient showed complete remission, what was actually not fully expected. What can we take out of this? Firstly, we can and should improve quality of life of cancer patients. Secondly, in some cases, the cure is there. We just don't see it, or we don't know how to find it. Thirdly, it challenges our approach on drug development and the limited view on indications settings we're operating with. This example takes me to the next segment. I like to work a little bit further. Inspired by this and looking into the different developments we're looking in the industry, I like to think about and reflect on the combination of artificial intelligence, how the developments in sequencing technologies, gene editing, and precise manufacturing of human cells, all together and the interplay of them are driving 3 paradigm shifts in healthcare. We're moving from disease management to curing it. We are also looking at developments and advances in shifting from general treatment to personalized one. We have heard so far right therapy for the right patient, and probably the case of MIT Technology Review and Cynthia is actually demonstrating this. And the third shift I could see is we are moving from known target, which is actually a very small piece in the whole options and possibilities of protein targets we could think of. We're moving from those little space of known to the unexplored, undrugged set of targets. Let me briefly organize a little bit the thoughts on this and give perhaps few examples on each of those shifts, at least you have some questions. Is that okay? I move forward?
No, I think those the examples for the sort of those movements and trends will be important for people to understand, like I guess sort of more traditional old way of looking at medicine and treatment, and the power in which AI can change how we not only research but treat patients and how we view the treatment process as well.
Sure, great. So let me go through the first one, from disease management to curing. For monogenic diseases and several cancer types, we do not have really the cure. We can only modulate the course of a disease. However, the advent of cell and gene therapy is changing this. Since the positive outcome of CAR T cells treatment on acute lymphoblastic leukemia back in 2018, most investments were channeled into cell and gene therapy development. As per today, more than 2,500 CGT trials are underway. CGT is considered as the new living drugs, therapies that can cure and replace damaged tissues and restore functions. So the hope is there, and we're really seeing great developments here, as we will see later on the JP Morgan releases and disclosures we have heard. The second one, from general treatment to personalized one, right therapy for the right patients. Again, this is the example we started this discussion today with the Cynthia's case. However, let me highlight 2 key drivers that will enable this or are enabling this. First of all, the artificial intelligence, and secondly, the tumor tissue models. Recognizing invisible patterns and trillions of cells with subtle biological differences among patients requires machine learning models with high resolution power and high computing power. Secondly, the predictive power of artificial intelligence can only be as good as the tissue model allows it. Tumoroids models maintaining tumor microenvironments, as those developed by Nalogen, for example, are found particularly essential to ensure high predictive power of the therapeutic interventions. And this, let me also highlight a less invasive approach in precision oncology. It's the one, for example, launched by OncoHost. They have developed a platform which uses artificial intelligence and rely alone on blood samples to predict patient response, for instance, to anti-PD-1, PD-L1 immunotherapy regimens for treating non-small cell lung cancer. This is an approach that may be restricted to some types of cancer, but it's still interesting to have it, and the benefit of non-being invasive can be highlighted here. On the third shift, moving from known targets to unexplored, undrugged targets in drug development Let me bring two examples. The first one is Civil Biotech. They found a way to target undruggable proteins while they are still folding. Thereby, small molecules able to interfere with the folding process can reduce the levels of proteins whose function is associated with a particular disease. Very elegant way of managing targets in this particular case. Simply because such proteins on their native form state will not be affected by any drug at all. The second one, LeadExprom, has just elucidated the world's first structure of a proton-sensing GPCR, G protein coupled receptor target. Given these receptors are involved in several pathological processes, it opens up a new array of therapeutic targets. Well, apologies, I've been running through those examples, but let me pause here. I think this can provide a little bit of a flavor of what is going on and what are those developments I love to highlight and we should be following up and to see how they will display and how will they develop and change the way we handle and we manage drug discovery.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you sort of containerizing, I guess, or sectioning off the three realms potentially is a good way to call it in the uses of AI, from, I guess, moving from patient well-being to curing diseases that you might deem before without AI to be relatively uncurable with it. And then obviously the creation of personalized medicine that's going anything from like you sort of explained around the tumor tissue models to everything very much simpler as well in terms of just understanding, you know, the right amount of drugs for your sort of diabetes compared to your body and everything in between, I guess. And then the last pieces of it around you know, how AI is unlocking never sort of considered before or thought about before ways of developing new drugs and discovering new parts of the process, new compounds, new I guess pairings for it as well. So there's a whole realm of AI which is being, the whole process around AI and a lot of areas in which probably people don't realize has a huge impact within the life sciences industry and will continue to do so. And one of the reasons why is because of the JP Morgan conference. And I guess it would be sort of pertinent to put down the importance of the conference because it cannot really be underestimated, I guess. And where it sort of situates within the industry, I think it would be very helpful for you to contextualize that first before going into what came out of the conference this year.
Oh, sure, Nick. Probably in a nutshell, the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference is known as the networking and deal-making event of the industry in a nutshell. Basically, and it's the conference to go, you know, and it is a special one because you go only by invitation, you know. It
very
is,
exclusive.
Yeah, very exclusive, but not that inclusive or exclusive because there are about more than 8,000 people, so you can imagine. And nevertheless, what it's important here to highlight it's a part of this, the leading investment meeting in the industry. It brings together the investors, as the name it may insinuate, all the industry leaders, technology and innovation drivers. So this is the meeting where all the innovation breakthroughs are disclosed, the strategic directions are communicated, external assets are looked for, and partnering deals are foreseen. So this is where everything is coming together in a way. All the key elements you need to bring an idea into tangible actions and strategic steps up to the market, or at least to assess what are my options to go on to the next stages, and whether this idea is going to fly or not, and whether the investor has appetite for this or not. So this is a key for, especially for biotech and startup companies. This is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also important in the fact that it's very much, and we'll perhaps touch on this in a short second.
Sure.
It's very important that everyone goes to the same place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You have that sort of informal meet. You have, crossing someone on an escalator, perhaps, that you've always wanted to speak to, which you can not always do when it's virtual. But we can sort of delve into the differences in a second. But what came out of the conference this year, which you want to highlight?
Yeah, it's been quite a when you asked me about this topic, I was really looking around and checking what is there. Can you imagine with so many parallel meetings coming, happening, and it's a massive development, how to say, a set of meetings and complex one and discussions and so on. But I have done a bit of effort in trying to put them into perspective and try to organize them in 3 segments to start with. I like to bring a little bit the investment environment. What is the flavor there? What are the highlights? Secondly, on innovation. What are those trends that maybe continue changing the development of the industry, and in which direction? And the third one I like to bring here are the new drugs and breakthrough treatments that are coming into the market. So I try to simplify all that complexity into these 3 segments. Obviously, I'm missing a lot. That apologies for that, but I like to bring a little bit of flavor. So in terms of investment, what it became clear is private equity dry powder remains strong. However, they are cautious where to invest. With high valuations declines, as we have seen last 2 years, and alarming operating cash cliffs, especially later last year. The challenge for this year will be aligning seller and buyer price expectations. Secondly, driven by, and we all know that, IP expirations by big pharma companies, they will be looking to replenish their top-selling drugs revenues. Consequently, kind of fierce competition for new medicines and novel therapies are anticipated. And the third one I like to highlight here is there is a healthy investment appetite for tech companies. However, they should bring tangible benefits to drug discovery and development, and we have seen that, also precision medicine and or improving clinical outcomes, and there are quite a large list of examples there. And as you know, AI in healthcare is highly populated right now, is becoming also highly competitive.
Yeah.
With few players becoming very powerful, because either they were earlier or they knew how to capture all that benefit, and they were clever on how to create value out of it. And many players are rather on the small size, but it's something probably you already addressed on a previous podcast. And let me move now to the second block, which is I try to bring few examples of innovation highlights. And again, here I have to say, artificial intelligence and data science have been the key topics at JP Morgan this year. As compared to previous years, the tone of the discussions has shifted from AI potential to tangible results and impact. For example, to put things into perspective, in Silicon Medicine has reported positive top-line results of phase 1 clinical trials using a lead compound fully discovered and designed using AI for treating idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, for example. Another breakthrough in generative AI, and this is very interesting, similar to ChatGPT, is the one that NVIDIA developed. They basically have a genomic language model that could be applied to a variety of biological questions and wide constructions of never before seen proteins. This would advance, obviously, the development of new medicines in ways we could not have been imagined before. Another trend observed is sequencing startups are shifting focus, and we may think, why is that? They're shifting focus from consumer-oriented genetic tests like 23andMe to clinical decision support and precision medicine. And lastly, let me mention Illumina keep having hard time with new sequencing challenges. They are entering those challenges. They are entering the market with higher throughput technologies, integrated analytics, and lower costs. So let me mention next to Ultima Genomics that we know last year, they came into the news last year, targeting $100 per sequencing. This time, Element Bioscience announced a $200 target. So this is the key highlights in innovation I like to bring. And yes.
Sorry, just before, got a question on the last piece there, just for people to understand who might not know what that sort of $100 per sequencing and $200 per sequencing means.
Sure. You know, probably, I don't know, Nick, maybe you're too young. in 2012, when we were talking about the first human genome sequencing, I mean, it was impossible to think. It was many years, many labs working on, and it was terribly expensive, you know. So the sequencing technology has evolved over time, and Illumina came across with the next generation sequencing technology, which is a high throughput and has brought the cost down significantly. But now, and we were all happy with that. I mean, more or less, you know. But still, genome sequence is still an important part of the budget if you're working on precision medicine or biomarker discovery, or trying to understand those diseases that are generated by mutations in a specific gene or so. So this is still, I mean, the basics, and we need that. You know, it's a must to have. Now, what's happening now is there are a few companies that are developing new sequencing technologies, and they claim to have integrated that with analytics, and they are lowering costs. You know, so and you know, we haven't heard about one sequencing work that will cost only $100. I mean, this is nothing, you know.
Yeah.
So can you imagine the impact of it? And I know Ultima Genomics, they were working on a steel molds last year.
Yeah.
And when they came up, I think they got like 600 millions investment on the spot.
Yeah.
Because, you know, because all these benefits and all that technology claims. And so, I mean, this is going to be the driver of precision medicine in the next stage, if we really get that low in terms of sequencing costs. The next one is this year, it's relatively new. Element Bioscience came and announced, okay, we are also going that low, and we're going to target those 200. I think Ultima Genomics, they've been working in the background before, so they may have figured out part of the supply chain, the machinery, and all that. I don't know though, the element bioscience is very new to me now. So I need to investigate a little bit further what they are offering, how different the technology is. Yeah.
No, thank you for that. I just wanted to contextualize for people. But I definitely, just as a disclaimer, I definitely was born before 2012.
You see? Wow.
I wasn't still around then. I'm not.
I feel old now, Nick.
But talk to us about sort of the new drugs and breakthrough treatments that were also announced as well.
Yes. I like to bring three of them just to bring a bit of awareness on those. A new class of medicines to prevent the onset of diabetes and fight obesity seems to have attracted interest from key players. Let's name them: Eli Lilly, Amgen, Pfizer, and Regeneron. No wonder. This is, as we know, this is a 30 billion per year market. So, I mean, okay, let's see. Interesting results, though. But it's let's see how they will develop, and several players as well. So let's see how it will work out. The second one, interesting and surprising to me, is a Biogen disclosed, given the past experience. Obviously, was a bit hard for me to follow, but quite interesting and courageous actually. They disclosed a new Alzheimer's drug, lecanemab, developed in partnership with Japanese company Eisai. They have received FDA's approval already based on positive clinical trials this past November. So it's coming. Let's see how they will perform in the market. Let's see. Something to watch out. The third one is Atara Biotherapeutics, and that's one of my favorite ones. Because they managed to get an allogeneic T-cell therapy approved to treat MS, multiple sclerosis, and solid tumors. This is special because until now, most of the cell and gene therapies were based in autologous systems. I mean, people, they will get from the same patient cells and they get back to the same patient. But the allogeneic allows healthy donors to provide those cell lines. Still, there are some challenges, technical challenges there, but somehow they managed to overcome all those. And this is a great achievement because this was a kind of dream to have off-the-shelf T-cell therapy, you know. And I think this is a nice example that things can be done differently, and hopefully they will successful with other type of solid tumors as well. Let's see.
No, and thank you for highlighting those three. And like you said, what can be quite relatively busy and you know, and everyone's trying to fight for the limelight a little bit. So it's really nice to have your take on it and what you thought was worth sort of putting a spotlight on for it as well. But it doesn't diminish anyone else's achievements as well.
That's right.
So we touched on it a little bit before, and you know, the impact of COVID on the conference and across sort of 2 or 3 years is obviously it can't be immune from it. With it. So what do you feel, has there been a difference from this one this year? Has it been a marked difference for you, or has it been a very similar trend for you?
Oh no, I think it is the same sentiment that we all had after COVID restrictions were over, and we were running to the first face-to-face conference, and the energy and the drive was there, correct? So it's been a similar experience this time. I mean, thousands of people they are meeting, and they haven't seen each other for 2-3 years or 2 years at least, you know. I mean, the dynamics, the energy has been there. The expectations were a little bit like, oh, what is happening now in the market? How is the investments how we are going to resume the high level of investments we have had, for instance, in 2019. And this was really in the news in 2019 when BMS acquired Scailyte for 74 billion. And we haven't seen any such a big move afterwards. Well, maybe Danaher acquire also in the same year GE Healthcare Life Science, but it was rather 29 something. So anyway, I think we have seen last year a decline on the investment rounds, a slowdown on merger and acquisition activities, where the hopes were like how it's going to be this year, how we're going to see this moving forward. As I mentioned at the beginning, investors are still cautious and they're still careful because of the different factors we mentioned earlier and others we haven't mentioned today, but are there. However, we have to say towards the end of the conference, we have learned about 3 rather moderate biotech buyouts. The first one, Italian Chiesi, announced it would acquire Amryt Pharma for 1.25 billion. Similarly, AstraZeneca released a 1.3 billion deal for Cinco Pharma, and Ipsen disclosed almost 1 billion deal for Albireo. So those are the 3 highlights in terms of merger acquisitions earlier this year. I'm expecting more to come, and because the money is there. So I'm rather curious to see in which direction this is going to go, and what kind of surprises are we going to see along the as the quarters fall down towards the end of the year. I mean, more to come probably.
Absolutely. And I think this has been a really positive spotlight, I think. And, as there are not great news stories floating around in the world at the moment, it's great that this industry and the use of AI has become, I guess, further validated. As you said, it moves from it being a potential future element in previous conferences to an area of it being results driven and validating some of the potential that was seen 3, 4, 5 years ago, which is awesome to see. And like you said, whilst the private equity powder sort of seems dry, remains strong in terms of what they can invest in, there is an element of caution to double check what they are investing in to make sure. But the appetite to invest has not been lost, and the ability to invest has not been lost, which is really pushing forward these innovation highlights, really pushing forward the new drugs and the breakthrough treatments as well, which hopefully we'll continue to see through this year further and further successes in the space. So I really want to thank you for joining us on this episode, Juana, because I think you've highlighted some really key successes in the industry, and once again you've been excellent in banging the drum, let's say, for our industry and really promoting it in a really articulate and considered way going into 2023. So thank you very much for joining us on this episode.
My pleasure, Nick. Thank you very much for the opportunity of speaking with you. Have a great time.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.